Have you ever found yourself online in search of the answer to a simple question, but instead of simply finding what you're looking for, you stumble across something so remarkable, so jolting to the core, that you forget about your initial search and go full on into a new path of discovery? Millions of people around the world have shared similar experiences since the 2020 lockdowns began, when looking to the internet for how-to instructions on everyday tasks and key life skills. It didn't take long for the educational, humorous, and wholesome videos to go viral as the internet unofficially adopted this inspiring role model as Dad. Welcome to the Goal Next Door podcast, where you get out of your head and create real connection anywhere. I'm your host, Amanda Ferris, and on today's episode, you'll hear my conversation with Rob Kenney, host of the hit YouTube series, Dad, How Do I?, and author of the book by the same title. Rob is a steady source of encouragement and practical dadvice for successful living, who not only has a ton of great tips for kids aged 5 to 95, is one of the most down-to-earth and compassionate people I've ever met. While Dad, How Do I? Has more than 3 million followers, Rob is genuine, humble, and is an excellent example of living with integrity in all areas of life. I'm so grateful for Rob's generosity and time with us, so before you hop online and binge watch his YouTube channel, you'll absolutely want to stick around to hear what inspired him to start and what keeps him going. You'll find it all right here on The Goal Next Door. Well, hey Rob, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Amanda.
Okay, so I have a confession to make. So I stumbled onto your YouTube channel, Dad, How Do I?, by accident. And I actually was on the video you made about shaving.
Oh,
And I was bawling like a baby, okay? And not just because I have a solution to these pesky whiskers, but it was like unbelievably touching. And I just kept thinking, because I mean, you know, this podcast is all about creating real connection in the world, and not just in like a buzzwordy way, but I think a lot of that connection starts at home. It starts with the people right in front of you. And a lot of times people don't have that example growing up. I was looking at the statistics of something like 1 in every 4 children growing up, which is the equivalent of 24 million children growing up without a father in their life. And I'm a really visual person, so I was like, okay, what's 24 million look like? That's just like a really big number, right? So I found out the population of Taiwan, the entire population, or another way to look at it is the entire population of Sweden and Portugal combined
oh
is like the amount of children growing up without a father. And that broke my heart. It was astounding, but not just because that impacts everything in our lives, you know, having that role model. I mean, everything from our education and graduation rates and propensity for substance abuse or crime, um, you know, poverty, our physical and mental well-being, substance abuse. I mean, the list goes on. And so when I saw your channel, and you know, I was like, where have you been all my life? I mean, I'm grateful that I have a dad, but there's just so many people who, I mean, obviously you've had a really great response from your viewership, but there's still a lot of people that haven't come across your channel. So I'm curious if you can just tell us about like I mean, I grew up without YouTube, and I'm assuming you did as well.
I'm a
So
lot
what
older
was,
than you, so of course.
again, I'm not the math pro here, but what was it like for you growing up? And tell us a little bit about the inspiration for where this came from.
Yeah, Amanda, it's kind of the perfect storm, I think, with this whole thing, with the pandemic, what we're all going through, and my background resonating with people. And then it's interesting what you said about watching me shave and crying. That was not what I expected, but I heard that a lot. You're not the only one. I heard, and I'm sure you're aware that you're not the only one. There's people that just watch me shave just for dad time, and they'll just have me kind of in the background talking, or what have you. Yeah, I thought honestly I was gonna help 30 or 40 people, just have it be a resource to help and try to, condense the the material down to where you're not wasting a whole lot of time. You can see my, my editing isn't fancy. I don't tell you, hey, hit subscribe and hit the bell and all this stuff. It probably costs me some viewers, I think, maybe if I was a little more savvy with that. But that wasn't the reason I started the channel. I'm just trying to be give advice like I would give to my own kids, and try to pass that along and keep it all in one place, where you could learn how to tie a tie, and you could learn how to, check your oil, and you could learn how to, I just did put out a lawnmower video today. Just a lot of little things, trying to download information that I had in my head. And it's something I thought of 3 or 4 years ago. And then my daughter was on me for quite a while to to do it. And I'm busy. I got, full-time job and stuff. But when the pandemic hit, I had some time on my hands and I ran out of excuses. And so, so I did the How to Tie a Tie April 2nd of 2020. And because it wasn't much of a commitment, it didn't take me much time. I just thought, well, we'll just see what happens. I'll throw it out there. And then I did How to Shave, the next one. And then people actually, then I started getting some subscribers, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm up to 300 subscribers, people, this is amazing, and yeah, so I had no idea it was going to resonate on the level that it has. And I'm trying to also, with the sponsor, I get sponsors weekly wanting me to work with them, and I've tried to stay on brand, so to speak, where I'm not going to recommend something I have no personal experience with, like even my lawnmower video. Heart Tools reached out to me and wanted me to they were willing to pay me to promote it, but I'm like, I don't know. And it was tough. It was a tough phone call, and to turn down money too. I was like, I just don't know if the battery is going to last. I said, no fault. It's probably amazing battery, and if it works, awesome. I'd be happy to promote it. But I said, I can't in good conscience recommend this product to my subscribers without having personal experience or some history with it. The thing's amazing. It's like a Rolls Royce, it drives itself. It's got lights on it. It's fancy. It's hums. It makes no noise, but if that battery doesn't last, and I've recommended somebody spend $400 on a mower because it's, $400 or $500 on a mower, how would I'd feel bad about myself if a year down the road, oh, it turns out those batteries are horrible. It doesn't last. Now you got this beautiful machine that it doesn't do anything. It just sits in the garage and takes up space, so anyway, so I've tried to stay in line with that, where I'm trying to set a good example in those type of decisions as well, right, to pass that along, because I we need all the help we can get. I could have used it myself when I was younger. So I've been rambling a lot here. I'll let you jump in here. So
no, I'm so impressed by you, because whether it's on the videos I've seen on your channel or in an interview or the time before we press record, that same theme of integrity is just present. And it's not like you can have a little bit of integrity. It's all or nothing, right?
yeah.
And that's something that is so evident in what you present. And it's a good reminder of how honesty isn't just some fluffy value. It's got to be hard to turn down things, but if in good faith, like, you can't promote something, that's also just another reminder of like, okay, where am I actually at on this when nobody's watching? So that's true for any age, right? But sometimes when we live in a world full of corruption and people making really bad choices publicly, to have somebody like yourself being that role model and living that truth. And we know nobody is perfect, but just as a reminder, like, hey, I can start again today and do better. It's just refreshing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I'm, again, not perfect by any means, and I have to fight the temptation, but you also have to, at the end of the day, I gotta, I am a man of faith. And so I try to live that out too. And the last thing I would want to do is misrepresent the Lord, that would be hard to live with. It would. If I was the reason people said, "Oh, see, that's why I'm not a Christian," or I don't. That'd be hard. And I'm not perfect, and you can't please everybody. I get it, but I certainly can do as the best I can. What with what I have to control, I can certainly, you know, yeah, try to do my best. That's all I can do.
So tell me where you learned that. And I want to know more about how your faith plays into not just your YouTube channel, but how you go about life and living, because a lot of times we don't give enough airtime to that. And I think it's important.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share about my faith. It's tough because people, and I get it. I get it. People have been burned by a Christian or what have you, or they have their idea of what a Christian is. And so I was raised in a Catholic home. I went to Catholic school, and then my family kind of fell apart when I was 13, 14 years old. I ended up living with my brother, and my brother had started questioning his beliefs and that sort of thing. And so he kind of had me questioning too, and trying to figure it all out. And then I kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater and just said, you know what, I'm going to live how I want to live. When I got to be into college, and then I got married, and my wife was pregnant with my daughter, and I lost my job. And I, from a skeptic's point of view, cried out to God, not necessarily knowing whether he's going to answer. And in all honesty, I had so many things that I had kind of built myself that I thought was going in a good direction. And all that was crumbling around me. I'm watching my wife go off to work. I don't have a job. And then it turned out that my daughter had an increased chance of Down syndrome. There was just a lot of things, and I was just, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing here, And so I cried out to him, and then things started kind of fall into place. And I made a bargain with God that, if you can help me out of this mess, I'll do the best I can to try to understand you and try to research and understand, what I think I know that I don't know. And so that, and I share that in my book that, I had to rethink things. I had to kind of grapple with some deeper things that I thought I already knew, that I didn't know. And God is good. So now, it's a huge part of my life. We go to church every week, and that's not a negotiable. It's been tough with COVID, so we kind of had to start watching it from home and that sort of thing. But now I told my wife, we're back in. We're going every week, because I need it. I need it to put things back into perspective, because the reality is, we're all heading towards the inevitable, which is death. We are. And so I think it's important that we talk about these things, because what's the most human thing, the most compassionate human thing we could do is to talk about it, because it's coming. It's coming for all of us, whether it's next week or whether it's 50 years down the road. You are going to pass from this life. And so I think it's important that we compare notes, right, in a loving way. Unfortunately, religion, there's been a lot of things done in the name of religion. I always think of, go back to the Pharisees, and when Jesus, would heal a person heal a leper on the blind, or on a Sabbath, right? What did the people that supposedly represented God do? They got angry at him for doing it on the Sabbath. That's a hard heart. That's Jesus just healed somebody, and you're caught up in your religiosity where you can't even see that somebody was just healed. Who cares if it's a Sabbath? There must be something more to this man, Jesus, than than meets the eye. Rethink that rather than rethinking, oh, we got to hang on to the Sabbath. Wait a second, somebody was just healed right before your eyes. And so I think of that, from my perspective on my channel. I want to make sure that I'm representing the Lord well, to the best of my ability, so that I'm not the reason that somebody says, see, that's where religion gets you, or what have you. So I'm always asking for prayer. Anybody and everybody, please pray for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're sharing, I just think about how incredibly relevant that story is today, where, we're coming out of a pandemic. Okay, so I'll say this. We have listeners all over the world, everywhere in Europe, Canada. I mean, there are many countries we're not in yet because we're a relatively new podcast.
Yeah.
But I think about some of our like high population areas that we have listeners like India. And at the time of this recording, they're still in the thick of
Mm.
these challenges. And it is so hard to think about, even just a year ago, where we're all kind of stuck inside and everything's sort of on pause, but not really. And, as we come out and wearing masks in some places, all of these restrictions and all of these things that whether they're physical restrictions or mental restrictions of like, I could help somebody, but not right now because of, the pandemic. Or I'll make a difference someday when, but right now I have my own challenges. And it's like, actually, this is the best time. The people right in front of you right now. And
Yeah.
the restrictions, there are ways around that if you want to look at it that way. And I think you've really done a beautiful job with your channel of taking a really challenging time and using it to reach a lot of people where normally if you're stuck inside, you're not going to see more than, your reflection and the people you live with, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not the first time you've taken a challenge and turned it into an opportunity, really. I mean, because of your upbringing, for example, there's a lot of people that live in that victim mentality. And, we can acknowledge bad things happen to good people. There's challenges, but we get to decide what to do with that. And that can be really empowering, and I think that's something that's a really common theme in all of your videos, whether you're talking about a lawnmower or a spray hose thing. It's like, I can do this. It's so confidence building. And it's like I mean, not that I've tried all of your videos yet, but it's always left on this note of, yeah, I can do this. I'm watching this and I'm feeling empowered. I'm not feeling like it's condescending or like I could be 70 years old or 7 and get so much out of it. So
Yeah. Well, thanks.
I'm really grateful. And I'm just curious. So you talked about how after your family kind of went through that transition, you went to live with your brother. You have 7 siblings?
Yeah, I'm one of 8.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm number 7. Yeah, so I ended up living with my brother, and yeah, it was tough. So I, the tricky part. So you brought up a few things. So the victim card. I'm with you. I think, and I probably played the victim card to some extent. I don't think I played it that much, but I did hang on to unforgiveness for my dad for the longest time. And when I was able to forgive him, and I share that in my book, being able to forgive him was actually freeing for me. It's funny, we deceive ourselves and think, oh, I can't, I got to hold that against them. And that whole saying of, you know, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and somehow the other person is, it's hurting the other person. Man, it's killing me. What am I doing? So sometimes you have to slow it down and again think, what have I done here? And so forgiving him was freeing, is in my best interest to forgive my dad. And yeah, so I think that's so important. I talk about the victim card. On my channel, I've talked about, you know, I love the quote from The Lion King. I'm sure you've probably heard me say this, but my bad imitation. But from The Lion King, where Rafiki hits Simba over the head, and he says, "Ah, what was that for? Doesn't matter. It's in the past." Ah. So anyway, it's true though. It's so true. It really, you can learn from the past, but man, to have that be kind of what how you base your life decisions and with your future, and keep dragging it forward. Get rid of it, cut it loose, and man, it's freeing. You don't have this baggage that you're carrying around with you, that you have to pick up each time, and keep bringing it to the forefront, leave it behind. Let's move forward and see what we can do together.
I love that attitude. And you bring it up in your dad chats. And I am so grateful that you add that element. And I don't know if you have like a certain like rhythm to, the frequency, or if it's just when inspiration strikes. But I can remember as a kid, like my dad would sit me down and like talk to me, have the dad talk about something. And he also had great dad jokes. So I can appreciate those quite a bit.
Right.
That's like a separate book, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but how those moments, while in the moment, you it doesn't feel comfortable all the time to confront something that maybe it's a bad attitude or a posture, holding on to that baggage or the hurt in the moment of that confrontation, whether that's with a parental figure or a boss or yourself. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel great, but later it's like, oh, that really helped me grow. And I'm so grateful for the people who had the courage to say something to me when I was being a butthead, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very well said. I think it's so true. I one thing that popped in my head, I think of these people that go on to American Idol and they sing and nobody's ever actually told them you can't really sing, maybe you should do something else. That maybe that's not your gift. Nothing wrong with that. It's just maybe not your, what you were called to do, or maybe so it's kind of what makes the show, is these people that have convinced themselves that they're actually good when they're not. So sometimes you need to hear the hard truth in love. I don't think that, what's the saying about, love without what is it, truth without love is brutality, but love without truth is hypocrisy. And I actually mentioned that in my book. I think it's so true. If you really love somebody, you kind of need to tell them the truth, but got to do it in love. You don't want to beat somebody over the head with the truth. What does that accomplish? You might maybe feel better about yourself, but nobody, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Amen to that. So I'm curious, when you were growing up, and so you went to go live with your brother.
Mhm.
Sometimes we can take on like pseudo adopted parental figures, whether it's like a sports coach or maybe your first boss or something. And I'm just curious if you had any influential people in your life, whether it was for a short time or a long time, um, during that transition with your family, that you were able to look to for guidance.
Yeah, my brother Rick, he was 23. Him and his wife, he was 23, she was 24, and they had just got married in October. And then I moved in with them in January when I was 14. And 23 at the time seemed old, but my son's almost 26, and I can't imagine him having a having a 14-year-old come live with him. So my brother's been mature beyond his years, kind of probably because of the birth order and being one of the older siblings. He kind of took, looked at us as younger siblings, kind of that he had to look out for us. Yeah. So yeah, with all that, I think I looked to him. And this is another thing about being a parent, and I've tried to model that with my own kids is, as they get older, when they're 5, you treat them a certain way, they're 10, you start letting the leash out a little bit, but then, okay, got to see if you can handle that responsibility. Okay, you didn't quite handle it. I got to pull that back. But as you get older, and then now I look at my kids as kind of my peers. They have I have their respect still. I'm their dad, right? But I don't treat them like I did when they were 15, where I needed to, watch everything they did. Now we're buddies. I talk to my son like he's my friend, and we talk about God, and we talk about all kinds of deep things. And I talk to my daughter all the time, just as peers. And I think my brother did a good job of that with me. He treats me like we're just buddies. There was a time he had to kind of be my dad for a time. But yeah, that's completely flipped. And now we're buddies. And yeah, we, I still respect him, maybe a little bit differently than I would somebody else, just because of what he did for me. But yeah, we're buddies.
That's beautiful. So having that experience with your siblings and then becoming a parent and now having your YouTube channel and your forthcoming book. How has that upbringing, that process influenced what you do today? Have you noticed, like in hindsight, like, oh, that really taught me this, or this really helped shape me here?
Yeah, I tried to, I try to, what's that saying? Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I think my whole life has been that, trying to learn things. And so the one thing I'll have to share with you, I don't think I've ever actually shared with anybody on any of these podcasts, is when I was younger, I obviously had the different issues, but I was a jock in high school, and I kind of prided myself in not learning. It was, oh, I'm going to fool the teacher. I'm not gonna, I can skate by in this class. I won't learn history. I won't learn. Then I got out of school and I said, I'm an idiot. I don't know anything. Way to go, Rob. You fooled them. Really, I fooled myself. And I wasn't a big reader at all. Coming out of high school and going into college, if it didn't have pictures, I didn't want to read it. And when I got to where I had to learn, more about the Bible and try to understand things, I actually prayed about that. I said, Lord, you're going to have to give me a love for reading, because I don't like to read, but I love it now. I absolutely love it. I devour books because I want to know as much as I possibly can. I don't want to be ignorant. I wish I had the mental capacity to remember half of the stuff I read, but but I do learn certain nuggets along the way that I probably missed some nuggets that I wish I could retain. But yeah, so that's one of the things I think in my book, like I was sharing with you earlier. I think it's you're going to be able to stand on my shoulders in some areas where you can learn some stuff that I had to learn the hard way, didn't know. I just had to, through trial and error, figure things out. And so I think the book, if people give it a chance, like I was telling you earlier, I think there's a few how-tos in the back that are worth, will pay for the price of the book, just because some of the financial recommendations that I give, I think are enough to to pay for the book itself. But then also you get the do you want me to talk about my book, or is that
Please,
kind of just
please.
running away with this thing? But my book, so the first part is so it's kind of memoir, where I share a little bit of my journey of where I've been. And it's based on my siblings and what I learned from my siblings. And I picked one when I turned 50. I'm almost 57. I'll be 57 at the end of May. So when I turned 50, I went around to each of my siblings and said, Mary, this is what the character trait that I've learned from you. And it happened to do with family. And then I said, and my brother Tim actually passed. So I said, and I remembered Tim for questioning authority, not in a bad way, but in the fact that it's actually okay. It's healthy to question authority, because I need to know why I believe what I believe. I don't want to just believe it because I told you to. Well, that's not good enough for me. That's not going to help me when when somebody's questioning, Rob, why do you believe that? Well, I just believe it because I want to believe it. Well, I need answers, and then I work right down my siblings with one character trait. I really think if people take the time to digest that, I think that'll be a heartwarming part of it. But then also, the how-tos. And then I mix in some dad jokes too. And like I was sharing with you earlier too, there will be an audio version too. And because it's so personal, some of the stuff, if you want to know what makes me cry, there's a couple of parts in there that made me cry. And I had to actually, pause, I was at the recording studio and had to ask them, hey, can you give me like 5 minutes so I can cry? The part when I forgave my dad, that was hard for me to read. And then another part with my brother Don, how generous he was with his time at such a young age when our family fell apart. when I was 14 and living with my brother, I tell the story of some of the sacrifices he made to stay in contact with me as a 16-year-old. He was a 16-year-old boy himself, he wasn't that old, but it was important to him that we stayed connected. And yeah, so that was the other part that that made me cry. But so I think I really hope people give it a chance, because I think it's good, wholesome, clean encouragement, that, and not like we talked about earlier too. With my channel, my big thing is I want to encourage people and empower them. I don't, I've been approached to do a TV show too, and we're trying to figure that out. But my big thing on that is I don't want to be the hero in it. I don't want to be, look at me, look at all the great things I know how to do. I want the people that come on with me to be the hero and see them light up when they get encouraged that they can do stuff. That's what excites me. That's fun to see somebody,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I taught that to that person and they're doing it. That's fun.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so since you brought it up about the okay, so we're talking about your YouTube channel and
Yeah.
then your book.
Yeah.
And as a fellow author and somebody who coaches people in that process, I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because some of our listeners are like aspiring authors, or they have a TV channel themselves.
Cool.
So what okay, so I actually want to go back a couple steps. So you were talking about how you were reading your book for the audio production, and what surprised you about that process? Like, how far you've come, like when you're reflecting, when you're able to step back from your life and see, okay, I created this thing that's going to live in perpetuity because of the internet, or
Yeah.
this book, but this is my life, this is my legacy. When you're stepping back and you're seeing tangible evidence of that, what is that like for you? To I mean, it can be emotional like you just shared, but was there anything else that came up as you reflect on that?
It's amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still trying to grasp it. I'm still working full time, so I'm still working because I didn't want to let that go. I didn't want to pull up short for me and my wife before we retire. I've still got a few more working years, and so I'm trying to navigate that. But it does seem like there's enough opportunities that I probably can. I'm just still trying to figure that out. Yeah, it's interesting because it's trying to uh, it's like I'm living in two different worlds, I guess. I'm trying to, I'm, I'll be on the Today Show, and I'll be talking to Craig Melvin, who just talked to the president, right? So I have to, so that I don't have my anxiety go haywire, compartmentalize it, where it's like I'm just talking to a normal person, when in reality it's Craig Melvin on the Today Show, right? And so it's pretty weird. It's pretty surreal. Trying to, yeah, maintain my sanity, maintain who I am, not to think more highly of myself than I ought, and still kind of take it in, kind of enjoy it without, I have to just continue to give the glory to God for it, because I've been given a platform to do good. I'm so thankful I went viral for something positive. There'd be a lot of things that oh, I can't get that back, and so it is a pretty cool legacy, right? I mean, being able to pour into people and have that be my legacy when I pass from this life, that's pretty cool. Right. I mean, I have to pinch myself for that, because I share in my book about, when I was younger and my family fell apart, and my big goal in life was to raise good adults. Even at a young age, it's like I want to meet a nice woman, and I want, because kind of to prove to myself that it could be done, because my dad, bailed. And so then when I got into my early 50s, kind of did it. It was like, okay, like we got them both through college without debt. And now what? Honestly, I was like, okay, so now what I do? Am I gonna, we're just gonna go travel and then I'm gonna die? Is that we're just gonna start traveling everywhere? Not to be morbid or anything, but really that's what the thought that was going through my head. Now what's my goal? That was my goal. I didn't have a goal after that, and so my wife and I went to Rome in 2019. We got it's something we saved up for, and it's something we wanted to do, and so we got to go to Rome, and we went to Cinque Terre, and went to Florence, and went to Venice. And all the history there is so amazing, and you go to Rome, though, it's still amazing to this day, but there's ruins of this once powerful civilization, and now you have just ruins left over, statues that are crumbling of these famous people at that time, were very, very powerful, and they're gone, right? They're not here anymore. They're long gone. And so I was just thinking in my own head, is like, okay, that even more makes me wonder, what am I here for? Why am I still here, Lord? What do you want? What should I, what's the goal, I guess? And yeah, so I share that in the book, that, being able to pour into people is powerful. And I think, like you said, it's sad, the fatherlessness in the world is, breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart, because, and I've shared talking, about long term. That's a big theme that I've tried to have, is think long term about your decisions, so that, don't just run after shiny objects. I talked about that. I, I don't know. Just want to try to encourage people to understand, if you make a decision as a father to run after something, there's somebody left behind. There's probably more than one, your wife, or again, I'm not judging anybody, not, I can't speak to every circumstance. There's different circumstances, but I just want to make sure people don't take that lightly. Think it through, think long term, so anyway, just trying to encourage people to, because somebody's got to clean up the mess. My brother and his wife had to clean up the mess. They had to step up and come through for what my dad's choice to, it wasn't like you just go away, out of sight, out of mind. Well, meanwhile, there's us all scrambling, trying to figure out what we're going to do, so anyway, if I can help encourage people to think think a little bit longer before you make a decision that's going to impact so many people.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've just been very divinely guided in your life. And like at some point you recognize that opportunity, even if it was just kind of a hint at wanting to have your own family and do it the way you wanted to and be successful, but to always be looking for the opportunities for significance, for a significant impact. And just with that being said, I mean, there's a lot of leaders that listen to this podcast, whether they have their own company or they're in an educational institution or whatever the case may be. And you can be a leader at home. You don't have to have a YouTube channel. You don't have to have like a podcast or, be an author. You can start where you are. And I'm curious what your advice would be, with all of the wisdom that you have from your life experience and what you've seen and lived. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to make a big impact, but they don't know where to begin?
Well, yeah, there's a few things there that I would say, and I got to be careful not to overextend. I'm not professionally trained. I just have had to figure things out and raised my two good adults, and learn things the hard way. So yeah, it's I don't know. I think one thing I think it's interesting, if we each took care of our own little, and I actually remember hearing my brother say this, but if we each took care of our little own, the world would be such a better place if we each took care of our own families and our own little piece of the world. I love that quote from Switchfoot, the song that says, "Is this the world you want? Well, you're making it every day you're alive." The reality check. Hey, I'm part of the world. Am I doing what I can with the talents and gifts that I've been given to change my little corner of the world. And we've become kind of fractured in our communities and stuff where we don't know our neighbors like we used to. And I love to do random acts of kindness. I think that's fun to, I share that in the book, not to toot my own horn, but to try to encourage other people because it's fun. I shared a story of us going through a Popeyes. My wife and I were going through Popeyes, and I saw this car behind me, and it looked like they probably don't have a whole lot of money. And so, maybe they do, maybe they, who knows? But I thought, I'm going to buy their meal. I told my wife, and she's going, "Oh, well, if you want to." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm feeling convicted. Like I just want to buy their meal." And so I go up there, and sure enough, I bought ours, and I said, "And I'd like to buy theirs behind us too." And then we just drove away. I didn't sit there and go, I want to see what their reaction, I want them to give me the credit. We just drove away. We didn't even look back, and just like, man, that felt pretty good, where you're not getting any credit, but you're just doing some kind of sneaky little kindness thing. Pretty fun. I mean, I see, you can even tell I'm a little giddy about it right now because
I love it.
how much
Yeah.
did it cost me, it cost me $25 or whatever. And still to this day, it brings me joy.
Well, and you touched on something else there is like you had that inner nudge and you acted on it. Hey there. Have you been following Rob Kenney, host of the hit YouTube channel Dad, How Do I? Exciting news. His book by the same title is available now. And let me tell you, I was a little shocked and very inspired by what he shares, which is why it's so important for you to get yourself a copy today. Dad, How Do I certainly mirrors the lessons Rob shares in his videos, but with more depth and clarity on how to put essential life lessons into practice. I'm talking about key skills they don't teach in school and might not have been taught at home either. The book, Dad, How Do I, by Rob Kenney, is refreshingly honest, vulnerable, amusing, and insightful. Genuine care is truly felt from cover to cover. In addition to his handy tips around the home, Rob shares much needed truths about forgiveness, integrity, family relationships, and work when others aren't brave enough to speak up. Kindness, love, and doing what's right isn't just some shtick sprinkled in to gain followers or endorsements. Rob Kenney is the real deal and a level-headed voice of reason, which is why so many people have unofficially adopted him as dad. I love how Rob weaves in stories from his life, including candid reflections of each of his siblings' contributions, as well as references to research and real-world modern-day events. I found myself smiling the whole way through, tearing up at times, and even being challenged to stretch in areas which I previously considered to be doing all right. Dad, How Do I isn't for kids or young adults. It's one of those rare gems for all ages, for gifting and for keeping. And bonus, reading it feels like hanging out with a compassionate mentor fishing on a lake. I can definitely see myself revisiting this casual but thought-provoking conversation of a book for wisdom, helpful reminders, and practical tips, kept off of the bookshelf and in plain sight at the ready to share. So visit dadhowdoiofficial.com. Order your copies of the book Dad, How Do I by Rob Kenney, and subscribe to his YouTube channel for even more inspirational how-tos. Seriously, we're not getting paid to tell you this. Do yourself a favor and go get yourself the book. Then pay it forward, pass it on, and leave a review. Visit www.dadhowdoiofficial.com or your local independent bookstore today. I wanted to ask you too, so I'm not very chronological about this, but when you were starting your YouTube channel, were there, maybe it was like self-talk, or was there anything that was holding you up from actually acting on that nudge? Because you said you had the idea like 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm curious, like in the events leading up to you actually doing it, what types of things did you have to overcome to make that happen?
Yeah, so there's a few things there. I'm actually an introvert. I'm not somebody that likes to get up in front of people and speak. And I've fought that my whole life. I've tried to, as an adult, look back and go, what's caused this? Why do I feel like my opinion or my what I have to say doesn't really matter? And I think it honestly stems from having 6 older siblings that we were kind of a dysfunctional family. We'd come together, and at dinner time, I wasn't, what could Rob possibly bring to the table that's going to enlighten all of us, right? And so I kind of just learned to live with it, and I just kind of didn't really speak up and just kind of went along and didn't want to rock the boat. And that went on into my adult years, where I avoided speeches. I avoided anything that would put me out in front of people. And it was kind of a safety measure. And then I share this in the book. So a few years ago, I was the #1 salesman at our company. And so I was asked to speak. First reaction, no, thank you. No, thanks. I'm good. And that was nice enough of them that they, valued my opinion and didn't want to force me into a situation that I didn't want to do. But I was like, it's something I'd struggled with for a long time. And I always was praying about it. Lord, I know this isn't something you want me to do, or as far as continue to hide from opportunities. And so, so I said, I'll do it. And yikes, we had a conference, a 2-day conference. And the first day I was like, I'd be busy doing whatever, learning about whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I got to speak. Why did I say yes? And, didn't sleep the night before, that night. And then the next day, it was haunting me, because it was like, oh, it's getting closer. It's just, and I can't, what am I going to do? Oh, fight or flight. But then I actually got to the point and did it. And I spoke in front of my peers, and which was about probably 40 people at that dinner. I got up and spoke. And at the end, my sales manager came to me and said, Will, he's just a great guy, a real encourager. But he came up to me and said, Rob, man, it's like we got this prize-winning horse in the barn and we never let him out. What are you been holding out on us? So that was very encouraging. And I talked to my son recently, and I think a good analogy to that is, basketball. You think of basketball and you get a guy on the team that's a great shooter. He's the best shooter on the team. And part of the game plan is to get him the ball so he'll shoot. And so you get out there and you're playing and you pass him the ball. He's wide open. What does he do? He passes it. You need to shoot. We got you here to shoot, And I think of that with a lot of us. I think we probably have way more to offer than we think, but we have the fears of the critics or the fears of what have you in your head. I'm the worst when it comes to getting in my own head. So I would just encourage people not to let that hold you back. If you feel led to do something, again, I'm not going to encourage bad behavior, but if you feel led to do something positive, and, I think, I just got to be smart. I think that, if you have a family and you have a good job and you're trying to raise kids and stuff, you can't just quit your job and I want to do this. I wanted to be an actor all my life. So you gotta weigh it, and understand whether it's something you can pull off or not. But I would encourage people to do stuff that maybe scares them a little.
I love that, because you're not only have you touched on it as you're talking here, but in just your life story, really, those points of pain, whether it's growing up without your dad there, or having, this could be for anybody, any challenge in your life might be one of those uncomfortable nudges to your purpose and to really having an impact. Like, there's a lot of people who, don't want to get in front of people to speak. I'm constantly, even though I'm doing a lot of public work, there's still that little voice. And sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. Like you're talking about it, like, yeah, that totally resonates, where most people would be like, what are you talking about? Like, you're always talking to people. I'm like, yeah, because I'm nervous. I'm just going to keep talking until they go away. But it's interesting how it gets something changes though. Like when you start to confront it, it doesn't have to be this big scary
Yeah.
monster anymore. It's still there sometimes, but I'm curious, when you went ahead and you started the channel and you weren't quite to, 3.3 million subscribers, what kind of challenges did you encounter as you were starting, and any resistance that's come up since, either internally or externally?
Well, I still, I'm still trying to figure out if I'm doing everything properly to help, yeah, drive views or whatever, to make sure. But I always have to go back to the fact that, I'm holding this with an open hand. If the Lord wants to put in and the Lord wants to take out, so be it. I certainly didn't plan on this, and I've been trying to enjoy the ride. And the fact that I got to write a book, I do got some pretty amazing things that have come out that will always be there in the world. And I've even said before, even if the views go down to nothing, I'm still going to upload, because I'm still going to upload, stuff that I think is relevant. And maybe 10 years down the road, maybe it'll take off again or something, because I think I have enough good information that, and again, it's all about empowering other people. I'm not a magician that's standing up here showing you my latest trick. I'm trying to, empower other people. And I have to believe that will go a long ways, for people that maybe don't have somebody that's trying to encourage them to step out of their comfort zone and try to do things that maybe they're a little afraid of. We've all known the people that, are very good at things, but they're not good at they're good at showing you how great they are at things, instead of, hey, I want you to learn this. I want you to learn this, and I want you to feel loved while you're learning it, so that
Hmm.
you can be empowered to do other things too. It doesn't have to be the tying the tie, or, if it's, I just want to, try to be a force for good, to help, to help encourage others. I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's really amazing that there's that consistent authenticity there, in that you're not doing this not just because you say so. Like, I believe you because you can just feel it through the screen here, and also in your videos. It's like you can feel that you're not I mean, you might be doing some things to make sure your platform is visible to
Yeah.
people so it can reach people, but you're not doing like these little, the social media tricks to get likes, and you're not doing stunts. You're
Yeah.
not doing something that's just like here today, gone tomorrow. I'm getting excited to talk with my hands kicking
Oh.
my mic around. I hope you can still hear me. But what I was going to say is that is a really important life lesson that a lot of people, even if they grow up in a loving family environment or in a great school or they have great role models, they aren't given that consistent message to do something of significance, whether that's in the small acts. Not, it doesn't have to be a big
Yeah.
thing, but those things over the course of time do add up. And that, even before the internet was invented, there's still that impact, like going back to what we were talking about earlier. And while social media, YouTube, book sales, all of those things are one like measurement, we can't necessarily measure our impact. People do remember how you made them feel and what they
Right.
taught you, or that impression from, I mean, I'm always going to remember the teacher that made me feel like horrible about whatever, even though they had high capacity to do their job. They weren't necessarily effective in that moment. And
Yeah.
if I would have just had that self-belief instead, that I could have probably figured out through the bumps, and it wouldn't have been about a grade, or and I think that's just a really common theme in your platform as well. And I just really appreciate that. And I'm really excited for you. I think there's some really cool things that have happened, but and I'm hoping that by getting this podcast episode out and your books coming up, that there's just going to be a whole new horizon of ears and eyes that are going to have access to your content, because that voice of, even if you have a father figure in your life, just having that consistent voice of, we've got you. You've got a t-shirt, I think, that says
You got this.
you've
Yeah.
got this. Yes. I'm like, oh, that is so great, because it's so positive. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you're willing to share what your vision is for the next part of your platform, whether that's through your YouTube channel or through your books, or what have those nudges been telling you about your future?
Yeah, it's hard to say, honestly. I'm trying to think. There's a couple ways I could go with this. One saying that I've always liked too is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that's one thing that I try to do on my channel, where I care about people. I want to see. The internet has turned into this place that's can be pretty brutal, and the suicide rate and of cyberbullying and all that is breaks my heart. And so we need wholesome content. We need stuff where people can, just a normal guy, I'd like to think of myself as fairly normal. This normal guy is just trying to, help people sincerely. And so anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think that's the tricky part, because I had no idea this thing was going to be what it is, right? And so it has been a year, so I've been trying to still figure that out. But now with COVID, I've got some pretty cool opportunities. I have an opportunity to work with this one restaurant chain to fly to uh, California and grill some burgers as a fundraiser for one of the, like, Boys and Girls Club or YMCA or something like that. That's how cool is that? I mean, I got some pretty cool opportunities to continue to pour good back in. I have to share this real quick with you though. So I wrote an article for a magazine recently, and I had to kind of codify uh, things and kind of make them simple, because I try to live my life that way, where I can get my head around it so I can actually remember it too. And I came up with this acronym called TAKE, because they wanted to know what I've learned the last year. And so I said, what did they say? What have you learned as the internet's dad? I'm like, how do I answer that? I didn't set out to be the internet's dad, and I would never give that name to myself. I would never say, hey guys, I'm the internet dad. It just sounds cheesy. It's not something I would ever say. So I started off the article saying that, but then I said, so the T stands for being true to myself. At the end of the day, I got to live with myself. If I compromise, if I do something, to get more viewers or at the end of the day, I've got to be able to sleep. If at the end of the day I end up, this all goes away, at least I can look myself in the mirror and go, you did it. You were true to the Lord and to myself, right? So that was the T. And then the A is, I can't get ahead of myself. I can't start future tripping about, okay, this is probably, or that, we all do it on different levels, but I can only control such a small portion of it, that I have to stay in the present and just go, okay, Lord, if you want to continue to bless this, then, I'll be faithful to the best of my ability. So that's the A. And then the K is being kind to myself, because, you get 99 amazing comments, and then you get one troll coming in and saying, well, what about this? Or, you sold out, Dad. You did a video and you made some money on it. Well, as long as it fits my channel, it's, so I have to be kind to myself. And I go back to, in the morning when I wake up, I used to look at my phone. I got to look at my phone and see what's going on, to stay in touch with my subscribers. But now I wake up, get a cup of coffee, read read the Bible or read a book, and take like an hour to just kind of, before I start my day. And so I think, and I had to set up that boundary for my own mental health to be able to do that. And then the E in take is enjoy. I'm trying to enjoy the ride too, and live in the moment and enjoy this opportunity that I've been given. So I think I really feel good about that article, because I felt like I think that kind of sums it up, and it's memorable. So, if people can, and again, it's not necessarily about me, but I think hopefully people can take that for themselves and go, that's pretty memorable, and maybe that'll, help somebody else.
Absolutely. I mean, it resonates through your entire platform. And, we talk a lot about the pay it forward philosophy, and you're really doing that on so many levels. You're really passing the baton, not just, hey, this is how you put up a ceiling fan, which is very valuable information, by the way, listeners.
Yeah.
But you're empowering people to do things so that they have a belief in themselves, so that they, if they want to have a family, can be that role model, or if they want to be that person in their neighborhood or at their workplace, or whoever they run into at any point, even if that's for themselves. And I just really appreciate what you just shared with your acronym. And that's a lot of great insight to stay grounded no matter where we are in the peaks and valleys of life.
Yeah. Yeah,
Very
one
refreshing.
thing that you said kind of gave me a little chills, because that is one thing that I am looking forward to down the road, 10 years down the road, hearing stories from people that said, hey, my dad left or whatever, and I watched your channel and I felt loved, and it encouraged me to do this, and now I'm this, and I'm like, whoa, it's like one of my kids. I'm looking forward to that. People were last year saying I was the Mr. Rogers, of this generation. I'm like, I cannot live up to that. Please don't put that title on me. But if the little part that I can take from the Mr. Rogers part is that it's empowering to people, and people feel loved, and they feel encouraged to step out and do something, I'll take that. I'll take that little nugget. That would make me super happy. I watched that Mr. Rogers, the Tom Hanks film, and I cried, because the impact that man had. He just kept it simple. He wasn't flashy. He was just kind of like a little kid himself, just running around. And I still remember the part that kind of got me was when he was on the set and the guy shows up and he just runs off the set and runs over and talks to him. It's like, you're in the middle of filming here, but he just got it. He lived in the moment and tried to do the best he could with the gifts that he'd been given. So if that's my legacy, that's pretty amazing. Be pretty hard to feel bad about that being my legacy.
I could see it now. So whoever listens to this, you have full permission to start your own YouTube spinoff. Instead of Dad, how do I? Dad, I did it. And Dad, I did it too. And me too.
Do it. I want to hear the
that.
success stories. That gets me excited. Like I shared earlier, I'd love to see people doing stuff that I've taught them how to do, even with my own kids. It makes me giddy. Right? I mean, it's like, oh, you did it, and you actually listened to me.
That's so funny.
As a true dad, right?
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, that reminds me, like when I was a kid, my dad would, kind of tongue in cheek, he'd be like, well, if you were smart, it's like, okay, well now I have to do it, otherwise I'm not being smart. Or do you really want to do it that way? Do you really want to do it that way? Yes. No, do you really want to do it that way? Okay, I think I got it the 50th time, maybe.
Yeah.
Something about thicker skulls as you're growing up as a teen. I don't know if that's scientific, but it sure seems like there's something going on there.
Yeah, there's something to be said too about learning the hard way on some things. I've always said with my own kids, they don't know what they don't know. I love that saying, because there are some things you can try your best to tell your kids, this is going to be a pitfall. Yeah, I got it. Okay, you just don't know what you don't know. And I have to just be okay with that you're just going to have to learn it for yourself, and then you'll go, that's what Dad was trying to tell me.
Well, I love that too, is especially in your videos, it's like you're coming alongside people to give them what they need to, here are the tools. You can choose to do it however you want to do it. And if you choose to do something different and it fails, okay, well, you can rewatch the video.
Yeah.
Or, you can kind of take people through, like, so how did that go for you? What did we learn? It doesn't have to be a big like judgment day conversation where, you're sticking the cat's head in the mess and making them feel bad. It doesn't have to be that way, because people are significant. We have intrinsic value. We don't need to be
Right.
made to feel shame about mistakes or bad choices, but we can learn from them. And when having a role model like you to show either that person who's learning or other role models, oh yeah, I don't have to talk down, or maybe they didn't see the example how to come alongside people that way,
Yeah.
and be compassionate and understanding. I think that's really critical, and especially right now we all need a little more grace in our lives.
Yeah,
So
I would agree with you. And here's another thing that I'll say, I'm certainly not perfect and I've lost my temper too. Life is hard, and you're going through life and you're sitting in traffic and, you get home and you've had a long day and then your kid starts bugging you, it's like, so it's, my life is in a different stage now too, where I'm, I think if you talk to my kids, I think they would say, yeah, I remember when you taught me how to drive, Dad. You were a little, yeah, well, there's a lot going on in life too. And from a kid's perspective, it's like, well, what's Dad's problem? Well, Dad's probably also dealing with how's he going to pay rent? How is he going to,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that are going on. So I'm not going to pretend that I always was just calm and I tried, that was the goal, but certainly frustration kicks in because you're trying to also do life, you're trying your best to put food on the table or what have you, a mom or a dad, and so it's
Mhm.
hard to, and from a 5-year-old's perspective, they don't get all that, they can't possibly weigh all that
Mhm.
you're dealing with, and they just want Dad to be nice, well, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, it's been a tough week or whatever, so anyway, I
Rob,
think.
thank you so much for being on The Goal Next Door, and for all of the work that you're doing in life, not just your videos, not just your book, but I can tell very clearly that, especially when you talk about your job and how that's important to, as a piece of integrity, to like stick with it and to abide by your word. I think that's just a really incredible example, and I'm really grateful for people like you in the world, and I'm so glad that you could be on the show. And I would love for you to tell us where we can find your book, and how else is the best way we can find. I mean, I have your book pre-ordered, I'm really excited. I can't
Nice.
wait till it shows up. But with Father's Day approaching, and even for those who listen to this episode after Father's Day, this is just going to be an incredible resource all year round
Yeah.
for to have on standby for those moments where we need a little inspiration, or we need a little DIY help with something that didn't go so well. So where can
Yeah,
we find you?
I think it'll have a shelf life. I'd like to think so. I have books that I hang on to just because I want to reread them and that sort of thing. So I think it'll have some shelf life, if nothing else, for the how tos at the back, because there's some things that I have how to start a conversation, how to start a conversation and keep a conversation going. So I have some practical stuff thrown in there as well. So yeah, so it's actually going to be available on Amazon and on it's going to be in Target. I actually shot a video, so I might scare you when you're in Target, saying, "Hey, Target family," I think is how I started. "Hey, Target family, yeah, my book's available there." And then I like to support the independent bookstores, and so Queen Anne Books, because I'm in the Seattle area, Queen Anne Books. Uh, you can get the signed copies through Queen Anne Books. And you could go to dadhowdoiofficial.com. That's my website. And a pop-up will come up with the links to be able to buy the signed copy or to buy a regular copy. And then I'm not sure when the audio version comes out yet. I'm meeting with the team on Thursday, so then I'll know. I don't know that right now.
Awesome. Well, I'll keep that in mind the next time I'm watching a video on how to shave. And I'm just so grateful for all the work you're doing. And thank you again Robert, for being here and for the light that you bring to the world. Just
Well,
amazing.
thank you, Amanda. You're very kind. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. That wraps up this episode of the Goal Next Door podcast, where you get out of your head and create real connection anywhere. Thanks for listening in. It was such a joy to speak with Rob and have you here right with us. If you'd like to learn more about Rob Kenney, his book by the same name of the hit YouTube channel, Dad, How Do I? Check out the links in the show notes below. Let us know where you're listening from and tell us how we're doing by leaving a review wherever you listen to the podcast. Thanks again for connecting with us here, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Goal Next Door podcast.